In this first video on trigonometry, I just want to recap very briefly the things that you were expected to know from last year. Remember, we studied the trig ratios. We learned them as opposite over hypotenuse, cos adjacent over hypotenuse, and tan opposite over adjacent. Cosec was hypotenuse over opposite, sec hypotenuse over adjacent, and cot adjacent over opposite. That all worked very nicely when you had a right angle triangle, but of course you can't fit an obtuse angle inside a right angle triangle, and so we started drawing our angles on the Cartesian plane. Remember, when you draw your angles on the Cartesian plane, that is always 0 degrees there, and we move around in an anti-clockwise direction to 90 degrees, to 180, to 270, and back to 360, which is a complete revolution. When you position your right angle triangle on the Cartesian plane like that, your adjacent is your x coordinate, your opposite is your y coordinate, and your hypotenuse is represented by the letter r. And of course, the theorem of Pythagoras tells us that r squared is equal to x squared plus y squared. You are expected to know your ratios, both in terms of x's, y's, and r's, and opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. Now, these ratios, the reciprocal ratios, remember, cosec is 1 over sine, sec is 1 over cos, and cot is 1 over tan. In the core math syllabus, you're not going to work with cosec, sec, and cot any longer. But I have just put them here, and I've put them in subsequent videos as well, just for those of you who are doing AP Maths. For those students, you are expected to be able to work with cosec, sec, and cot. The next thing that you have to remember from grade 10, when you're drawing your angles on the Cartesian plane, you're going to start at 0 and move around in that direction over there. Okay, we refer to this as the first, the second, the third, and the fourth quadrant. And you need to remember this little summary of where all your ratios are positive. We come back to this diagram over and over again. So in the first quadrant, x is positive, y is positive, r is always positive, and so all your ratios are positive. In the second quadrant, your x value is negative and your y value is positive. So the only ratios that are always positive in the second quadrant are sine and cosec. If I move into the third quadrant, I'm talking about an angle that will start there and move around. When I talk about an angle being in the third quadrant, I mean it finishes up in the third quadrant. Both x and y are negative, and therefore the only ratio that's going to be positive, okay, is going to be tan, and clearly its reciprocal cot. In the fourth quadrant, x is positive and y is negative, and therefore the only ratios that are positive in the fourth quadrant are going to be cos theta and sec theta. When we deal with negative angles, all we are going to be dealing with is starting again at 0 degrees over there and simply moving in the opposite direction like that. So an angle of 30 degrees would lie over there, an angle of minus 30 degrees would lie over there.